Good afternoon. It is officially 12:08 on 25th of March. Hopefully my background music isn't too loud. I don't think it is, but without having a monitor going on, I have no idea. I was going to be on a Zoom call. That's what I planned for. And then I found out when I clicked into the link that today was not the day. It's tomorrow. And here's what's troubling for me is I don't know if I'll be able to sit in on the Zoom call, and I don't know if we'll be able to apply because it's one of the requirements for this no restrictions grant. And so I got to figure out what I'm going to do there. Probably email them. But here's what's crazy about this whole thing. Maybe it happened it happened this way for a reason. So I'm going to roll with the punches. And then the other thing is maybe I was supposed to post video content today. I'm not totally sure. However, here I am. My camera's kind of wonky. I can see in the back there. So and then I look up here and it's wonky. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave it, get the content out, and go from there. So maybe me signing in on on the wrong day is what was needed. That is it. It happened the way it was supposed to happen, is what the elders would say. It used to bother me. I've shared it many times on this channel and in and on my Substack. So I just finished writing Substack, and I talked about a couple of few things, and the big one that kind of drove the post was how nowadays we're I don't know, we're trying to own things that can't be owned. If it's wisdom, like Father Richard Rohr says, and I highlight this in the post, that it doesn't belong to a particular person. Wisdom doesn't belong. It belongs to the, what does he say, the collective unconscious or something like that. I love the quote. Reminded me of Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and in verse 9 talks about there's nothing new under the sun. What has been before will come again, and it's just a cycle, right? And so in one way or another, the wisdom we're sharing today was wisdom from the past. And so who am I to think that I'm some kind of extra brand new bougie? Well, I'm human, I guess. But I look online. I am no longer on TikTok. I am no longer on Facebook. But I see things coming over from there, videos coming over from TikTok still, and in YouTube Shorts. And one of the things is I'm like, man, some of these old ways are just not dying. Some of the old ways of marketing, also known as manipulation. Some of the old ways of marketing just are not dying. It's like the like I've talked about before on this channel, how I've observed the death process 2 to 3 times, and two of them were inside of a hospital setting in a intensive care unit. And it was one time I remember specifically. We were getting excited about our loved one, doing better, our relative doing better. And the nurse pulls us to the side and said, just want you to know that this is normal. Them being coherent like this, and it's the body's way. It's the last rally before the inevitable end. And I'm like, but I had experienced it twice to realize that there is something, there is something there. And I believe that truth, or that thing that I observed in the death process, is what I'm observing now in culture overall when it comes to American culture and world and what the world's going through right now. And I feel like we do have an opportunity to do something to change kind of the course of how things are going. I hear the concern about AI. I went down that road listening to, let me pull up the video, the video name, and then I'll share it with you. What is it? I gotta look in my history. Hopefully I click rightly. And then you don't get all of the sound behind it. So let me look into YouTube Shorts here. I'm not sharing my screen, so you're not seeing any of this, which is good. Oh, it was a video. That's what it was. All right, let me. Okay, it is. We're not ready for super intelligence. So it's a 34-minute and 11-second video. The creator is AI in Context. It has 10 million views. Anyways, talking about how, where things are tracking and how people are concerned about AI, and it recommended slowing down. And I think that that is the way to move forward in most things, slowing down. That's what I did once, when my son made the journey. I was I had to slow things way down, and in some ways, I'm glad. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I listened to myself and I slowed things way down. I tell people in treatment programs all the time, slow is fast. You're not going to play the long game. That's what the creator does, and so we need to slow things way down, take things in little bite-sized, manageable chunks. Just like an old boss of mine used to say to me, just bother me when he would say that to me. How do we eat an elephant? I'm like, I don't care, but I had to answer, else I wasn't leaving the room. And so it's one bite at a time. So, if the concern is out there when it comes to AI, super intelligence, saying we have to slow this thing way down, we go too fast, it's going to get out of hand. And I say that about compounding too. So I say, you can sit there and get so caught up in negative thinking that it's only a matter of time before you relapse. And I'm going somewhere with all of this. And so, or it's just random. Maybe that's what this channel is just messiness, thoughts from a guy that has seen different, industries and seen things, that is a wounded healer, and is just trying to get the word out there because I don't have the influence. Hold on, excuse me. All right. That doesn't have what would you call it? The platforms, the influential platforms, the opportunities to go into places of conversation where ambiguity is welcomed and things like that. I got this YouTube thing that I'm throwing things out there. So hopefully, if anything, maybe someone will pick up something and they'll say it in a better way and more powerful, more with better cadence or whatever. But I'm gonna do my part in getting it out there. And so when I look at all these things, and like I said with my Substack, and I look at how today shook out, it happened the way it was supposed to happen. And so here I am. I fired up all my equipment to get on the Zoom call, and then I find I click on the link and it says the call is tomorrow. So here I am. So maybe a part of making this wisdom even more, just kind of really kind of fold into me as a human being and then as a spirit, is to talk about it. So, when Richard Rohr says, he says that, wisdom doesn't belong to a person, it's a part of a greater thing, a greater, um, a greater spirit, maybe. He's probably takes a lot of hits because he's, people like chalk him up to being a Catholic or Christian universalist, and but he's got some good teaching, and I think that a lot of people gravitate towards him because of the mystery and the ambiguity. But I shared his quote and how he talked about that truth, and I talked about how this AI thing, and how I went down a path. I went down a path about how AI. all these videos I mentioned are all on YouTube Shorts. Like I said, I'm not on TikTok. The individual was, I think he's a TA at a college, and he was describing how they use an AI program to detect AI, and they look at keystrokes, cuts and pastes and pauses, and I'm like, holy cow. But people still try. They still try to, have AI write their paper for them. And the one example he showed that they just they just wrote the final sentence. Anyway, I just felt like it was a gotcha moment. Like, if we expect students, people in colleges, that they're all going to be like that, aren't they going to behave that way? The thing that you put out there, isn't that the thing that you're going to attract? And I don't care. People can call me whatever they call me. I came out of religious fundamentalism, and I'm okay with people throwing things at me, and accusations. I've been called a liberal Christian, and I don't even like being called a Christian. I'd call myself a disciple first, a learner of the holy man Yehoshua, also known as Jesus. But I wouldn't call myself a liberal Christian. So quickly, when we don't understand what somebody's getting at, we just label them right away, and I do it too. I'm trying to unlearn it, and that's what I highlighted in the Substack, was that I'm trying, maybe these things that I'm being critical about are things that I struggle with to an extent. They might not be, deviancy, or, I'm thinking of the bell curve, people don't struggle with it. The 80% that do, or 90% that do, and that 10% that of that 90%, on the other end of the bell curve is deviancy or whatever. They're really bad at it. I Maybe the reason why it bothered me so much that this TA was kind of putting, I picked up a gotcha vibe, like, oh, we got this software that's gonna pick up, and I'm like that, if we expect people, and I do lectures at a local some local treatment centers. If we expect people to behave a certain way, we treat them like animals. Are they going to behave like that? It's like that same argument is in prison systems. you know uh, I don't see it changing anytime soon, for the most part, because the prison industrial complex needs to get paid, needs to have some revenue. But think about all the other industrial complexes that are out there. The Christian industrial complex, it needs to get paid, it needs revenue, right? But I've stopped drinking from those waters, and so I've learned the hard way. And so when I share things and I get things out there and I talk about how I have, again, this is another thing that was in the article, or in the Substack. I remember watching a podcast a good while back. It's got to be easily, if I look at the time, maybe about 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, maybe almost 15 years ago. The podcast was called Entrepreneur on Fire with John Lee Dumas, and he was interviewing somebody, and they were talking about wisdom. They were saying that John Lee was saying something to the effect of, uh, when I like a quote, or I like a wisdom or a truth, I will uh, make sure to give that person credit where I heard it from. I'll give him credit 5 times, and then it's mine. And the person he was interviewing said, "Yeah, yeah, man, I totally get where you're coming from. If I tell, I can't remember if he said he told people, but he basically said, if you like what I'm saying, file off the serial numbers and make it your own." And so between those two, I use that to this day. Um, there's been sometimes. I remember one time I was in a group setting, and I had used a quote that I think it's one of those quotes that is kind of keeps your perspective about who you are as a human being, you know. Um, but I've stopped using it. I don't know, just because the person that spoke it is kind of in a weird place right now, and so, but good came from them, so I'm going to share it here. So whether you agree with him or not, where he's at, and he probably got it from someone else too, but the the quote is, when somebody says, "How are you doing?" The quote is, "Better than I deserve." And so the guy's name is Dave Ramsey, financial advisor, blah, blah, blah. I had said this in a circle one time in a group. We were all getting together, kind of little pods of people visiting, two over there, group of four, three. And I had said that. I had quoted our relative Dave Ramsey, and this individual says to me, "Oh, a little bit of Dave Ramsey quote." And I'm like, I guess, can you imagine? I told my wife yesterday, can you imagine what it's like to go around and cite every source? Like, I heard this, it was on this day, on this episode. That we would never be able to shorten things up. So I feel like right now it's just like a time of being critical, and so I tell those that are struggling to, get some level of, sober thinking, sober mindset, sober way of being. I tell them that, that we need to unlearn the ways that we're observing now. Right now, you're gonna I say, if anybody teaches you to hate a person, or a people group, or an organization, you name it, if they're teaching you to be, how to be their enemy, or they're teaching you how to war against their enemy, you're in the wrong place. You need to, you just cut bait right now and just get out of there. I think that that is one of the things that needs to, again, I got to pause, I got to mute this real quick. All right, for some reason I have not ate anything, and I am burping. So I'm pausing it and making sure that I don't unpause it, because this unpause or unmute thing is just kind of finicky. Anyway, I'll tell people, whoever, wherever I'm at, inside a sauna, and again, there's a reason why I say sauna. It's the Finnish language, and I don't like it when people jack up Dakota Lakota language. So I'm going to respect this. I'm not trying to be extra brand new or bougie. I'm just trying to respect a people group and their tongue, for Pete's sakes. But whenever I'm in environments and people want to hear my point of view or my feedback or something, or they want to listen to me opine for a little bit, I'll share with them this frequent thing. Like, we're in a time right now that we need to um, relook at the idols in our lives, those things that have gotten us out of balance. Those medicines, we need to pull them down, but we need to be extremely careful what we put back up. Back in my time, taking seminary level courses, and whatever pastoral training courses and things like that, we would have to read commentaries upon commentaries, what other people's experience. Oh man, it was exhausting. I'm so glad I'm done with it. I actually am not done with it. That's, I'll still do research to go see what a certain group, thinks. But this gentleman wrote a book called The Institutes, John Calvin, and in there he says something about the human heart being an idol making factory. Take one down, put one back up. And I think C.S. Lewis kind of expanded on it too, and then among others. And so I'll share this teaching in treatment places, and I'll say, if that's kind of like the human thing to do, is that we're, and in addiction, in addiction centers, we they call it substitution. We need to be careful when you take the drug of choice or the drink of choice out of its place. Nature abhors a void, and so I'll use physics, and talk about how we need to be careful about what we put in this space, and then I'll tell them about how Ecclesiastes teaches uh, that the Creator's placed eternity in the human heart, and the only thing that can fill eternity is eternity. And so, why not uh, take into consideration what Dr. Bob and um, Bill Wilson created with the 12 steps? If this is indeed a spiritual malady, we need to have some spiritual tools. But I totally get it. Some of you maybe have been burned by the church, and here are some non-religious ways to go about it. And maybe some of you aren't Christians. Here are some other ways. And I feel like ever since I have taken on this way of being, of not making things more important than they have to be, I've been given, tremendous, what would you call it? Latitude, tremendous freedom to go and grab wisdom wherever I find it. And so that's what I've been doing, and that's what kind of what I was going. This is the law. If I were to, this would probably be another article in the series or something, but because you're getting extra credit. Uh, all my content. So I plugged this in. This is something I hadn't prepared to share, but I plugged this into Gemini, so Google's AI large language model, and I asked. I said, "Can you get your ones and zeros on this, and just tell me give me your feedback." And and I totally get it. The way that it's built, it pads, kind of pats the human ego, things like that. But it picked up a vibe. I couldn't believe it. It picked up. It said, the way that you bridge these 2 points is actually kind of good, and it highlights, what this. What you said here, and then you said something about you're a messy writer, and that's how, in an age of AI content, content creation. Maybe that's what's neat. I'm like, that's actually kind of cool. I'm sorry, I got to shave this thing, or have it trimmed up or something. My my memorial mercy beard. Hopefully, if I maybe I'll share about that in this video too. But uh, where was I going with that? I struggle with bright shiny object syndrome. The scene in the cartoon Up, Pixar's Up. I'll probably get flagged uploading this for even mentioning. My goodness. Um, but where was I going with that? But at the end of the day, it's I think that the whole post and what I'm trying to say here is that if wisdom is a part of a greater thing, and everything belongs to the Creator, and if we do experience the reality of what New Testament scripture says, that in him we live, or in him we live and move and have our being, which was, I hear, listening to folks that are outside and inside American Christian circles, they say that that was a Greek thought. I can't remember who they highlight, but if it's true, then that means that none of us is none of it belongs to us. We can't take anything with us, and which is crazy because you know when we get there, when we get to the beautiful country, when we make the journey in Dakota Lakota way, we believe that we'll see our relatives are alive. We'll see our people again. And that was tribal thought too, and I've been going down the dark path of trying to understand people that have walked away from Christianity. And I can, I do, I understand where they're coming from. Not all of it. I'm still learning, but I respect their decisions, and I'm not going to try to talk them out of it, or you know, uh, what'd you call it? Reason with them. Like some of the reaction channels I watch. But what if we're here to to learn. I think about and people are gonna, oh, that's Taoism. Everybody quotes the Matrix. Chill out. Go scroll, pause, go somewhere else. Then you don't have to stay and listen. Um, but when the Oracle is talking to Neo, and says, offers him a piece of candy, and he's like, "You already know what I'm gonna." And she says something about, "You've already made the decision. You're here to understand why." So when you think about, today is, right at this present moment, I'm here recording a video that I didn't prepare for. And I said in the in the Substack too that, I'm trying to I wrote it down. Now I'm communicating it. So maybe in speaking it, I'll get another glimpse, another facet of this jewel that is this little gem, this little pearl of wisdom, or pearls of wisdom. And in getting it out, it's a good thing. I tell clients all the time at the treatment centers that I speak at, I tell them, I know it can seem burdensome to write, but it's extremely therapeutic and there's power in it. So um, I've been writing more, and the good thing is I feel like maybe there is a little bit of a, I could carve out something. Maybe it's like two pieces. I still have up on my board here. I'm looking at it. It's a structure for a morning book. Morning, Mourning, and just my experience of what it was like holding just that 1 year, and realizing that grief isn't done, that I still mourn my son. I still miss him. This morning was one of those days, and it's probably going to continue. I'm trying to get better at not controlling the tears, but maybe I just need to not think about controlling them and just continue to talk. And if the tears come, they come. But I miss him. And sometimes I see him in these clients, and they want to give me hugs and stuff, and it's hard for me to do that, which is weird. Um, it used to be hard. Maybe that's the better way of saying it. It used to be hard. um, I'm getting better. When clients ask, they're like, "Is it okay if I hug you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I feel like it's a hug from him. I mean, he lived the Dakota value of calling those that struggle with addiction his brothers and sisters. And so he took them as brothers and sisters. And so maybe I'm hugging my son and daughter, Yeah, it's so crazy how these things come to me lately. And I try to share with people, and they either they want to analyze me, diagnose me, and solve. I'm a thing that needs to be solved. And oh man, there's some days I just want to be heard, you know, just want to be listened to. So I think I got, if I, I pulled, I think I pulled all of the stuff that I wanted to get out there and what I was talking about, maybe just to make sure that the learning sticks. I am going to pull open my Substack real quick. I'm heeding a nudge. And that's what I tell the clients at the treatment centers is heed the nudge, whenever you feel like you should, listen to yourself, trust yourself. And so let me pause again. Here comes another one. So yeah, I did share about the 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 teacher assistant, I think they're called, AI detection. Talked about how, wounded healers and not making things more important, pulling down, oh, that's what the one thing I'll tell them. I'll say, in treatment centers they call it substitution. We have to be careful what we put in that space, and like I was saying earlier, nature abhors a void. So it matters what you put into that space. Put good things in there, and play the long game. And they seem to. What's crazy is treatment centers have the wounded healers. I think it was Rich Roll on his podcast was talking about, that's what the world needs right now are these individuals that are the wounded healers, the people that have seen hell and are in front of us. And we should be grateful for their stories and their experience. And so I talk about that, and I'll talk about somebody that encouraged me yesterday, just seeing them succeed and seeing life in their eyes, and I'll tell them as much. I'll say, you know, I can see it. I can see the fire. I can see the light in your eyes again. It's noticeable. And they always kind of look at me, and it's almost like a Skylar smile. Like he would give us this like quarter smile, just kind of like he was up to something, or I don't know. But the way that they smile at me when I tell them that, you can tell, especially when I use wording like, I'm well pleased with your effort. My goodness. Yeah, I'm so glad I ran across you. Our paths crossed. I can see the light in your eyes again. And they'll look at me and they're like, they're really proud. They're really, you know, th- I wish I would have did it more with Skylar. I can't believe that, and I share this a lot, and I'm so grateful for all of them. And that's why I pray for their sobriety, that they'll get so a sober mind, and they'll get healing. And uh, because they're such great listeners, I feel guilty, and I tell them that. I say, I feel guilty that I'm sharing this in your presence. I feel like a horrible human being sharing my pain with you, and always talking about my son. And inevitably, one of them will come up to me later on and will say, no, I needed to hear that. We need to hear that. We need to hear a father's heart. We need to hear, a relative's heart, a brother's heart, or, uncle's heart. So yeah, I wanted to share that. And then the other thing that I wanted to share as I close this down is in Ecclesiastes, it reads, I just want to read it. What has been will be, and what has been done. Man, my eyes are blurry with trying to look through the watery eyes too. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9. And I go into that. I use that as a segue portion to talk about how Richard Ward talks about wisdom, that it's not ours, it's about, it's the collective mind. And please bear with me. I repeat myself a lot. Maybe that's for me to get the fully have the wisdom folded into my entire being. But he talks about how, it's the collective unconscious, it belongs to the collective unconscious. And, I say that, maybe that's what we need now, is to realize that our taking is not getting us anywhere, that we need to be very extremely intentional and to listen to one another. One of my favorite NPR, um, what was it? Was it Hidden? Was it on Hidden Brain? But it was on one of their podcasts, and they were talking about the edge effect. Like creativity is on the edges; it's in the margins. So when we come out of our silos and come to the places, the edges and stuff, that's where creativity is found. And maybe that's what's needed right now. We're talking past one another, in our politics, in our religions, in our ways of being, whatever groups they are. We're divided. And so if our leaders are this way, and we look at the world, and it just seems like the cosmic bingo card is one, just a couple of stamps, spaces from total blackout. Maybe we just need people to push away from the table and go to the margins, you know, look for community. I don't know. But yeah, I'm gonna shut this down. I'm looking at the time here. It's 33 minutes. So, but here's what's cool about this is I've gained some new understanding about this. That as I'm doing my windshield time, finishing my day out, running some errands, I'll have more to think about. So that's what I'm gonna do. Rather than share it here, I'm gonna have that windshield time and um, think about it even more. So thank you for listening. I know it's random, and maybe that's what this channel has to be, is messy, random, and authentic, and filled with crutch words and all of that. I don't know. Anyway, dokshta. See you later.